I was so thoroughly convinced OKC would win this series in 6 games that even when they were down by 22 at halftime, I went live and did a YouTube short saying they would come back and win this game. And boy, was I wrong. OKC ended up losing the game 108-91 in a game that wasn't even that close, okay? Everybody was pulled by the fourth quarter. It didn't really matter. They were down by 30, 90-60 going into the fourth quarter. The story is going to be that they were down by 30. To me, the story is that their offense was atrocious and horrible. I'm going to get to that, but in general, I got to first fess up. I got this wrong. Look, entering the NBA Finals. Well, let's just start with this. Just to let everybody know, for those who don't know, Oklahoma City lost to Indiana 108-91 in Game 6 of the NBA Finals at Indiana. We now have a Game 7 that will be back in OKC on Sunday night to determine the NBA Finals champion. I picked OKC to win in 6 games. Before the start of the finals, I said they will win in either 5 or 6 games, depending on what happens in Game 1. I predicted that OKC could lose Game 1 because they had been off for 8 days, so they could be rusty. And they were rusty, despite the fact that they forced, I think, 14 turnovers in the first half. Actually, more than that, I'm pretty sure, of that game. Their three-point shooting percentage wasn't what it needed to be. And I said that, okay, that was the game where Tyrese Halliburton hit the game winner. I said with that loss and with that game, they would lose 1. And now it would be a 6-game series instead of a 5-game series. I was wrong. I'll take the L on that because they lost to Indiana. They got blown out in this one. Some people are going to say that they were playing not with their backs against the wall because they knew they could return home to win Game 7. I don't think so, and I want to get to that. I think it actually has a lot to do with what Rick Carlisle and Indiana did and the adjustments they made. And now if I'm OKC, I'm concerned. I'm doing a 180. I'm concerned. But I did pick them to win in 6 games, and everything after that seemed to be going my way. OKC won Game 2 in dominant fashion. Indiana won Game 3. I predicted that after Indiana won Game 3, OKC wouldn't lose another game in the series. And I was almost there because they won Game 4 and 5, but then this game happened and they lost Game 6. So I was wrong. I'll own it. I am so willing to own when I'm wrong, by the way, guys, that I'm going to share the link right now in the description of me predicting at halftime that OKC would win this game despite being down 64-42 at halftime. I've shared that link. Now to the game itself. There's not much analysis to give except this. Rick Carlisle proved why he's the best coach in basketball over the past 30 to 40 years, particularly when you consider the NBA is a sport where the stars and the better talent wins out. Rick Carlisle has a championship ring without having a top 10 player in the NBA. And that's obviously 2011 with Dirk Nowitzki. Rick Carlisle would have had another championship ring had it not been for the fact that his best player got suspended for the entire season when he was at Indiana in 2004 in Ron Artest because of the malice at the Palace. Rick Carlisle is an incredible coach, and I believe that going into this game, going into the series even, I said he's an incredible coach, and he proved it beyond what I even thought in this Game 6 win. Because what happened? What changed with this Game 6 win? 2 things helped Indiana. 1, Chet Holmgren once again disappeared. He's disappeared in a few of these playoff games, by the way, and particularly these finals games. I'm starting to think he's just not clutch. I think Chet Holmgren is scared of the moment. But he had 4 points, was 2 of 9, and was 0 of 3 from 3. That was bad enough. But the big thing that happened in this game was Rick Carlisle switched up his defensive scheme. He did a matchup perimeter zone. I don't know if you guys saw this. And he focused on putting Pascal Siakam on Jalen Williams or Alex Caruso, depending on who came onto the court. How'd that work? Jalen Williams did have 16 points, but he was 0 of 4 from 3. Alex Caruso had a big, fat 0 points. That's right, 0. More importantly, Jalen Williams is plus minus -40. Alex Caruso's minus 33. Jalen Williams and Alex Caruso were the giant liabilities of this game. And Rick Carlisle called this matchup perimeter zone where he put Siakam on Williams and Caruso specifically. And Mark Daigneault could not figure it out. I've said for a while, I think Mark Daigneault is a really, really bad, overrated coach. Okay. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has been carrying him. It happened again tonight where Gilgeous-Alexander had 21 points and deserves a lot of credit, did everything he could. But Gilgeous-Alexander did have 8 turnovers. And part of that was the perimeter defense that nobody prepared for. How does Daigneault not prepare for that? That's embarrassing, okay? That's embarrassing. You got to figure that out. Rick Carlisle pulled a Rick Carlisle where he put on a coaching masterpiece and he was able to pull it off because his adversary was so incompetent. Okay. This is no different than the 2011 NBA finals that LeBron is infamous for with that meltdown because Rick Carlisle put on a matchup zone and Eric Spoelstra, for the life of him, couldn't figure out a matchup zone. How do you make millions to coach in the NBA and you can't figure out a matchup zone? Mark Daigneault, Eric Spoelstra, you both should be fired. This is absolutely ridiculous. You shouldn't be allowed to be coaching the NBA when you can't figure out matchup zones, particularly on the perimeter, and you can't figure out one matchup. This could be an issue going into Game 7, guys. Rick Carlisle did something that he doesn't usually do. He pulled out this stop at the beginning of the game. I think it was largely because Indiana's back was against the wall, and he knew he had to do it. And shockingly for everybody watching, OKC never adjusted, ever. Now, yeah, Chet Holmgren still is not part of that. Chet Holmgren was just awful from the outside in general because I think Chet Holmgren chokes in the big moments. So when you have the combination of Chet Holmgren choking in the big moments, when you have the combination of Chet Holmgren choking in the big moments, Mark Daigneault not being able to make adjustments to a defense, and Rick Carlisle being a coaching genius in the NBA by putting Pascal Siakam on Jalen Williams and Alex Caruso and calling that perimeter matchup zone defense, you get the result you got in this game in which Indiana destroyed OKC. Now, OKC, I still think is going to win Game 7. I think they will make enough adjustments to win because if Daigneault can't make adjustments to this, then he should never be coaching another game in the NBA for the rest of his life, okay? But it's still disturbing that he couldn't make the adjustments within this game. That's kind of a red flag. It also, again, just shows how great of a coach Rick Carlisle is. On the other side, I don't want to buy into this whole, oh my God, Tyrese Haliburton was just hurt last game. No, he had 14 points. He was 5 of 12, 37 from 3. He had 5 assists. Okay. Tyrese Haliburton was fine the whole time. He was struggling last game because OKC turned it up a notch. Rick Carlisle had not made this adjustment, and Tyrese Haliburton is not as clutch as everybody wants to claim. I've been saying that for a while. Obviously, Pascal Siakam, I mentioned him earlier. He was the star. He had 16 points and 13 rebounds. And off the bench, Obi Toppin dropped 20 points, went 4 of 7 from 3. But look, it's not like Indiana shot OKC out of the building. Yes, OKC struggled to shoot the ball. They were 8 of 30 from 3. But Indiana was only 15 of 42. That's only 35.7% from 3. And they were only 68% from the free throw line at 17 to 25. They had 10 turnovers, but they forced 21. And you don't think Rick Carlisle's defensive adjustments had something to do with OKC only shooting 8 of 30 from 3? Of course it did. That was the big thing in this game. Rick Carlisle is the reason there is a Game 7 and that Indiana has taken it all the way to a Game 7 of the NBA Finals. This Indiana team has no business reaching a Game 7 of the NBA Finals. None whatsoever. We are talking about the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference. They were 14 games behind the Cavs in the regular season and 18 games behind the Thunder when you look at the overall standings. And that's the Western Conference. Obviously, they're the Eastern Conference. But still, they have no business being this far in the finals. If you go by record, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the team with the 6th best record in the NBA has taken the finals to 7 games. That is a total testament to how amazing of a coach Rick Carlisle is. I can't stress it enough. Rick Carlisle is the best coach in the NBA the last 30 to 40 years. He is the one guy to actually win a title with significantly less talent than the team he was coaching against, and that stands out.